Title: The Deadlocked Files, A Tale of Fog, Mustaches, and Wall Bags. Part I. The Fog. The fog clung to Chancery Lane like an accusation. It coiled in the alleys and hovered above the cobblestones with the suffocating patience of bureaucracy itself. Somewhere inside the cold corridors of the Court of Chancery, the case of Jarndyce and Jarndyce proceeded without end, like a ghost walking in circles. Gillian Anderson M-, as Lady Dedlock M- stood perfectly still beneath the towering stone of the estate, her expression unreadable, her silk dress unmoved by the windless air. Inside, Mr. Tulkinghorn scratched his quill across another legal document, his eyes half closed like a man perpetually peering into someone else's secrets. He had begun to suspect something something beyond the dead-letter case, beyond Lady Dedlock's cool facade. There were ellipsis points, disturbances, space-time anomalies. He wouldn't use those words, of course. But the candlelight flickered without reason, and the wall between the servants' quarters and his study had twice emitted a low mechanical hum. Jarndyce and Jarndyce must be protected, he whispered, no matter how arduously we must pacify the situation. He would say it again, 7 more times, as if repetition might itself arduously pacify the creeping sense of unreality. Part Second. The Library. The discs were dusty, but the librarian at the Islington Public Library retrieved the 3 DVD set of Bleak House without a word. The cover featured Gillian Anderson, ice pale, skin spectral. A woman out of time. Scully stared at it. Mulder, she said, you realize we're on assignment. Mulder adjusted the F.B.I. mustache glued to his upper lip. It had been itching for hours. I believe this, he tapped the DVD case, is evidence. Of what? That Dickens was a time loop. That Bleak House is not fiction it's a warning. Gillian blinked. She saw herself as Lady Dedlock standing on the steps of Chesney Wold. But also herself, as Scully, aiming a Glock at an alien biopod near Roswell. The timelines were ellipsis points folding, intersecting. Fog from 19th century London had begun seeping through bathroom vents in modern DC. How many times, she asked, have we tried to arduously pacify the time breach? This would be the 6th, said Mulder. 2 more and we qualify for a temporal pension. She didn't laugh. Part Third. Chesney Wold again. It was no longer just playing Lady Dedlock. Gillian Anderson woke up inside the costume, inside the manor, in a world written by someone who had never envisioned her, yet now could not exist without her. Jarndyce and Jarndyce blurred into background noise. Characters moved strangely, as if compelled by some off-screen narrator. But it wasn't Dickens. It was something alien. The wall bag had first appeared near the drawing room. An ornate, brass device affixed to the paneling. It pulsed. When Scully walked past she couldn't call herself Lady Dedlock anymore, not with that FBI badge hidden in her corset. The wall bag pulsed again. She leaned in. It whispered. Part Fourth. The F.B.I. mustache incident. They had worn the F.B.I. mustaches for 3 years now. Scully's was a face one drawn on with theatrical wax and powder, a disguise she donned, as part of their protocol, for non-human presence masking. Mulder's was real. He had grown it during the Denver case when Saturn's third moon had phased into a DMV office near Boulder. The mustaches helped. Aliens, it turned out, could not distinguish humans with face hair. Facial disguise disrupted their pattern recognition. But the mustaches weren't enough. Now, the aliens had adapted. They were reaching back, warping Victorian England to retroactively destroy Earth's legal foundations by taming Jarndyce and Jarndyce. Gillian had to warn them. Part B. Tulkinghorn's Revelation. In the lamplight, Mr. Tulkinghorn who Scully knew as an observer, a semi-alien lawyer agent confessed that the wall bag was not of human origin. They installed it during the Boffin affair, he said, sipping brandy. An interdimensional restraint. It suppresses free speech not just of people, but of narratives. Dickens's own pen was influenced. Bleak House is a corrupted message. That's why we must arduously pacify the paradox. You keep saying that, said Scully. It doesn't help. Nevertheless. Part Sixth. The Merge. When Mulder entered Chesney Wold, he did so with boots that left 21st century mud on 19th century rugs. Tulkinghorn saw him and nodded. Another one with a mustache. An F.B.I. Mustache, corrected Mulder. Distinguish, please. It won't work here, warned Tulkinghorn. Not in this fog. Scully was pacing in the great hall, the wall mag, now fully activated spinning with glyphs and tiny mirrors that showed flashes of electric lights. Abandoned spacecraft, and once, her own childhood home. This must be how they broke time, she whispered. Through stories. They're using our archetypes, Mulder said. Lady Deadlock. The never-ending court case. The indecision. They feed on narrative delay. And we arduously pacify delay with closure. Impossible. But we can confuse them. How? With more mustaches. Part 7th, A House Divided. Wall mag. The device now floated mid-air, surrounded by ink and pages torn from the original Bleak House manuscript. Characters like Duppy, Caddy Jellyby, and Joe the crossing sweeper stood frozen, half erased. Mulder adjusted his F.B.I. mustache. Scully peeled off her face one and placed it on Lady Deadlock's portrait. A humming began. The timeline split. In one, Lady Deadlock died in the snow outside a graveyard. In another, Scully placed a microchip into the wall mag and downloaded X-Files, Season 3, Episode 20 directly into Victorian reality. Aliens choked on narrative incoherence. Part 8, 8 times. They had to arduously pacify the fog. Not once. Not twice. But 8 times, each more difficult than the last. In the Chancery courtroom, where every ruling echoed into parallel worlds. At the orphanage, where Richard Carstone had started drawing alien sigils in soot. In the tea room, where Miss Flight recited names of species instead of birds. On the DVD menu, which now refused to play episode 2, unless they spoke Latin. Inside a memory palace, built from old BBC sound stages and cheap sets. In the morgue, where Tulkinghorn lay with eyes open, reading the future. At the Islington Library, where the DVD case melted into an interdimensional gate. On the moors, where Deadlock met Scully and time stood still. Each time, they arduously pacified the bleeding timeline, plugging holes with mustaches, wall bags, and misquoted legalese. Part 9th, Return to the Files. Back in 2025, Gillian Anderson sat across from David Duchovny in a quiet coffee shop. We just filmed Bleak House, she said. You mean you did? She looked out the window. I remember the fog, she said. You always remember fog. She touched her upper lip. No mustache. But for a moment, the mirror behind the counter shimmered. A face one appeared. Then vanished. Part X, the final wall bag. The fourth and final wall bag had been embedded inside the X-Files archive vault. Beneath the old Hoover building. It shimmered faintly now, sensing no further disruption. Time had been restored. But in a small pocket universe just adjacent to the 1850s Lady Deadlock sat in her chair, reading a manuscript titled The Truth is Foggy. The mustache pin beside her mirror was neither fake nor real. It simply was. And it would remain, until time decided to twist again.